what we see as ability or disability, they are all social constructs, and they are based on the idea that the body is in the center of all the debate about disability, that disability is in the body. But as sociologists of disability, we know that disability is about the social context. It is the social model which talks about taking the attention away from the idea of disability as a medical issue. So I'm glad that Professor Mehta was talking about ill health, chronic pain, chronic illnesses as one of the very important, areas where it disability intersects with poverty, and especially in the global South, it is a very, very important, concern, area of concern, where we are looking at not only poverty, underdevelopment, lack of infrastructure, and many other such, development deficits that actually set out our understanding of disability, largely from global northern understandings of disability. So there lies the whole decolonial efforts that some of us have been engaged in. That how do we understand disability in the decolonial way? And one of the concerns that also take us back to the debate on globalization, that what globalization does to the idea of disability and to the persons living with different kinds of impairments and disabilities. So, one globalization interestingly has three prominent aspects: the economic aspect, and we know that globally, persons with disabilities are in much more precarious situation today because of the fact that the traditional kind of work and occupations have withered away, and new kind of work opportunities have come up. For instance, in Indian context, if you look at agriculture, almost more than 80% of persons with disability live in rural areas, and they were in some way or the other engaged in agricultural work. So when the agriculture declines, then there are fewer opportunities of jobs and employment for people with disabilities. In government sector, before 1995 Act of PWD Act, there were no reservations. There was no affirmative action. But we see that, with the decline of small scale industries also, with decline of other small scale work opportunities, wherever persons with disabilities were accommodated within the Indian economy and they were not really seen as dependents. Today, globalization has created situations where you have fewer and fewer jobs for persons with disabilities. Though I don't say that corporates have not come in a big way, or the state has not come in a some kind of a way through microfinance and other programs. Nevertheless, the traditional occupations where persons with disability were engaged are no longer there. The other aspect of globalization has been cultural, which is cultural aspect, and we know that what joins persons with disabilities globally, the kind of similarity that you see is because of the cultural representations, the way they are stigmatized, or they are excluded, or they are discriminated against, not seeing them as competent enough to do jobs or do studies, or to be in certain kind of fields, that is political field, etc. So you find that there is a culture of silence about persons with disabilities. They see them as asexual, they see them as incompetent, they see them as lesser humans. So, and this affects their citizenship rights also. I think it is a very, very important way in which we look at dis-citizenship, which is denial of citizenship to people with disabilities. So that is the third aspect. So if you don't have accessible vote booths, if you don't have accessible educational institutions, if you don't have accessible, structures where people work, then this is a clear denial of opportunities to people. But there is also a different aspect to the political aspect of globalization, that globalization also brought forth the rights discourse to the mainstream, to the center. So, so many marginalized sections, including persons with disabilities, actually came to the center, and their voices they started to be heard. So, this was UN Declaration of Decade for Persons with Disability 1982 to 1992, which actually gave momentum to the organizations working with disabilities, different kinds of disabilities, to come together as cross-disability rights groups. So disability rights groups came, and there was a lot of pressure put in the Indian context on the Indian government to come up with the PWD Act, which is Persons with Disability Act 1995. But this is also very interesting that on one hand, the Persons with Disability Act gave a fillip to created an identity for people with different kinds of disabilities, though the Government of India only recognized 7 types of disabilities in the PWD Act 1995. Nevertheless, there was a identity which was in the making through the PWD Act 1995, and this is, I have written about this also, and I believe that it was more of an international pressure that brought Government of India to actually act on the question of rights of persons with disabilities. So, but we have seen from 1950s, early 50s, that the approach of the Government of India has been welfare oriented, and from welfare they adopted the term development, and gradually you find in the new millennium that a right-based approach emerged. So in 2007, Indian government actually signed UNCRPD, which is UN Convention on Rights of Persons with Disability, and which further created, I have just taken 10 minutes. So, yeah, I'll take my 5 minutes. Yeah, more. Yeah, so I know. What I'm trying to say, that this is PWD Act 1995 and the India signing UNCRPD are very, very important, global forces, global events that actually brought out the rights of persons with disability in India to the public domain. So in this context, you find that the movement through the disability rights activist, disability organization, that is civil society organizations working across the country, they were all mushrooming during this period. From 2000 onwards, you find a very, fast kind of movement on this account. In JNU also, I have seen between 2008 to 2015, there were so many activities, there were so many assistive devices that were being provided to persons with disabilities. The design was undergoing change, and disability studies was also coming of age in the Indian context. But as far as I'll just take few minutes about decolonizing, disability studies here and disability rights. So much of our understanding in this part of the world, not just in terms of disability rights, but other aspects of social, variables, is informed by the discourses coming from the global north. But when we start looking at what is happening in this part of the world, and are there any specificities? Are there ways in which we can articulate the notions, keeping in mind the specificities of historical and cultural, situations? One is that the global South has been inflicted with colonialism for a very long time, and colonialism has left our institutions in a way metaphorically disabled, and people as disabled. The other aspect is that there are situated solidarities that are coming up. So you find we have much more in common with African or Brazilian countries or Latin American situation than with the European or American situation, where aggressive individualism is something that you see. So they are constantly talking about independent living, but we have always been talking about interdependence, because of the lack of state care systems, family and communities have been the pivot to support systems in this part of the world. The third is that when we are looking at the state action, in this case, state action remains very medically informed. I'm not going into the debate about medical and social. Medical has been rejected by the American and European activists, but in the Indian case, we see that medical model is equally important. In a situation which Professor Mehta was also mentioning, where there is long-term, diseases, long-term illnesses, and where an old person might just be functional by getting a simple device like spectacles. So, medical model remains very important, but so is the social model, that you have to correct the design, you have to create accessibility, you have to create infrastructure, you have to create a situation in which persons with disability are getting accommodation, support system in their workplaces. So I think there are ways in which, when we are talking about democracy, when we are talking about social justice, I have always felt that the disability perspective is an extremely important and critical perspective, which challenges the received wisdom about the way society functions, the way politics functions, the way our institutions function. So I think calling out the deficits in democracy is also to include people who have been marginalized through colonialism, modernization projects, and also globalization. But globalization also gives them some kind of a voice to air their concerns, and they are making their presence felt, because they say as nothing about us without us, and nothing should be left behind. Thank you.